So then, when you go to the rear elevation, again, now you can see where we're adding the garage, where before there was a blank wall.
That's
and
the north
a shed roof.
elevation.
That's the north elevation, yes. Again, before, I believe we had some chimneys and stuff that we want to keep these chimneys where they are, so we're not changing anything.
Yeah, and getting rid
That'll
of the
go the
sliders
same.
and all that sort of stuff, that's good.
You see the same in the latch. As you can see, kind of in these photographs, there are all different kinds. There's a casement with 8 lights, a sliding glass door with
Doesn't
no...
fit.
Yeah.
Try to get some continuity through.
Excellent, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
And this is
What in the
the east
world?
elevation.
Yeah.
So,
Definitely.
again, some of these are clouded to show that we're restoring.
What is this?
Which sheet are you on?
That's-
Which
that's
DES,
this,
what page?
That's this.
DES 8,
Eight?
the upper left photograph.
Yes.
That-
the railing.
That's this.
The
Yeah,
railing
that's the
Yes,
railing on
that's
that.
the railing.
that they,
See, here's the door.
yeah, is it a railing, but does it go
It's a
up?
railing, but it also has multiple cross supports.
Are they keeping the sheep up there? What was that?
And actually,
is it
some
really
of
tall, or is
these
that just the
are
photograph?
braces, because there's really no posts and
Oh,
rails.
no
and stuff.
kidding, wow.
That was probably an open porch, when it was built. Not meant to support all of that. But
Pretty wild. So, let's see here. Now we're changing all the windows again, huh?
And you don't have a detail on, what will that railing look like? More traditional posted railing than what you're proposing up there?
Yes, exactly. And the
Okay.
post will play off the pilasters
Pilasters.
below and columns that we
Will
have on the porches.
capitals on them or some kind of,
Yes. Some of these elements also that we're
Where's the railing?
eliminating is in kind of this alcove, there's a very odd, almost octagonal. It looks like they tried to do it circular, but didn't do a very good job at it. So we're kind of taking that and revamping that as well.
In a circular fashion?
No,
No,
it's
no,
actually
just getting
just
rid of
gonna
it?
take it off.
Demolishing it.
That's what
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah.
Well, that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
That does look like an afterthought if there ever was one. Wow, this is quite a project here.
That's a big,
So we do have, just so the board sees, we do have some renderings on how we would like it to end up.
No, but that has, doesn't that have the 2 and the 1?
This is the proposed, yeah.
I thought,
Originally, it has 3 across there
Oh.
sort
now.
of closer together.
Yeah.
good.
It'll be interesting to see what you discover in terms of the entranceway.
Yes.
I mean, Zach's comment is right, it's top-heavy, it's there, but it throws the house off a bit. And if it turns out that restoring it back to something original lightens that up, that
Yeah.
could work well.
well, I think what you're doing is amazing. I think there's a lot of really good stuff here, and the idea of cleaning it up, bringing back some elements, editing out some of the little hybridizations or bastardizations along the way. It may be obvious, but it's a lot of work, and I think it looks great. It's exciting to me. I have 2 questions. One is on the south facade, that porch on the east side doesn't have a window currently. It feels a little bit like a cube, and I'm wondering whether you considered putting a window into the porch form on the right side of the house.
You mean, you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like a
This thing?
This thing, yeah.
Yeah. I actually have some misgivings about it myself.
Not that it needs to be the same, but it feels a little lifeless.
So, plain.
What was it? What is it?
Actually, right now, it's a bedroom.
Uh-huh.
It's
Was
a
it
blank
part
wall.
of the
and-
real,
Yeah, that's the original,
it's original?
yeah.
Well, I
So
think
what
that
do you
was an
think
open
was in there?
porch. They just-
It was probably an open porch originally that got
Closed or
enclosed,
something,
yep.
yeah. So I have no problem adding another window in there.
It just asks you to
That would work.
consider
That would be
it.
in, that would be in the bathroom, so.
It feels, like it's calling out for something to me. That's just my observation. And similarly, on the garage in the back of the house, I'm looking really at the west elevation.
So this,
I-
that was part of the original building?
That's the way it's
QB thing?
this here, yeah.
But if it was open, I could see it.
Probably as a screen porch or something.
Yep,
And the
probably.
reason it's going to be a
When they
QB
closed it in,
thing,
they needed a place to put the
when
bed.
was it, it would certainly be much nicer open.
But it is enclosed. I mean,
It's
Well, I
totally-
know, but
yeah,
when
it's
was it
walled-
enclosed?
Walled and everything now.
I know why they want it enclosed, but I'm just saying, that seems like an anomalous part of this building when you really look at it.
But, houses were added on to that way, or open enclosures were made conditioned space over time.
Yeah,
So
but
I don't-
that's the big when, isn't it? When it was added on to?
Well, it still looks ugly.
Yeah, so it wouldn't have looked ugly if it was a screened-in porch without this nonsense up here.
I don't mind it being enclosed space. The other place where it felt to me like I'd love to see what it would look like with windows is on the garage in the back, on the west facade. Those pilasters, the four of them feel a little overwhelming to me, but maybe that's neither here nor there a little bit. But it's a long stretch without any windows. I know it's less visible from the street. It just feels to me architecturally like it wants to have a little life
Something.
back there.
Okay.
Otherwise, I commend you for taking this on, and I do think, as Zach said, the use of consistent materials around the different forms will unify it in a way that I think the architecture, particularly up front near the road, will still be quite visible, but I think it'll pull it together and will be pleasing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. You want us to jump right over to
Your
the
next?
latch?
Yeah.
Well, we should adjourn this case, is that right? Or
We should adjourn this.
Yes, motion to
Would you like to adjourn?
Yes, please.
So I'll make a motion that we accept the applicant's request to adjourn this to our...
Approve the applicant's request.
Approve the applicant's request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
Aye.
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 So we're moving on to Beechwood Latch LLC, 101 Hill Street. Partial demo, exterior alterations to latch building, construct 7 units and clubhouse.
I'm not sure.
Sorry, I need to do some housekeeping.
So what I'd like to do is start with the latch and then move on to the buildings in the rear.
We need to make sure we have all the affidavits, so let me just, bear with me for a moment.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Here it is, underneath the other part. Thank you. Sorry about that, guys.
Just kidding. So there's the full file. It's just work on these. Pass those down. I got one for you here. Chrissy and I have one for you.
Do you have one, Zach?
Oh,
This is, I'm not good at getting it to you.
Okay, thanks. So similar to the Terry Cottage, we'd like to do pretty much the same, a restoration of what was there, and try to fix some of the changes that were done over the years to make it a little more historic. As you can see on the top, I guess we're on DES 5. You can see that in the front facade, we have some inconsistencies with some windows and stuff that we think are not original. So we tried to bring it back to what it used to be. And again, this front facade was very symmetrical, so we tried to do that as well.
And the chimneys are not correct on the renderings, correct? The orientation's been
Right.
changed?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, you're right. Thank you.
The chimneys are shown as they exist.
As they exist.
Yeah.
And they will remain
In those locations?
in those locations. I know we were talking about the Terry Cottage. We had some additional chimneys on
Oh,
there that
yeah.
we took off, so we kept everything
Right.
as
Good.
original as possible.
Yeah, right.
And they were doing the same here. Yeah, so as you can see also, the front facade, if you look at the bottom right photograph, there are,
Sorry,
DES
DES5.
Thank you.
which is the south elevation, there are screen doors on the porch of the front door. What we'd like to do is take those off and restore the front porch to the way it was.
Would that starburst have existed without those screens, Zach?
No, that was probably inserted. I mean, we'd have to look at it more carefully, but that was probably built to accommodate the screen doors.
And if that's the case, we're more than happy
Yeah,
to
you could-
take that starburst out.
Because that has no function, absent the doors.
It's not a detail you see elsewhere, and it is in that same plane.
Good catch.
Again, we're going
And
back
do you
to,
think that porch,
And those both appear to have been open porches. The staircases are still there, where they've walled it up in the middle, on each side. On the west side and on the south side, the stairs are there, but it leads to a wall, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But we also think
happens
that
in a
those,
number of places.
the second stories on those two wings appears to have been built later, on top of the porches. So as built, one story, then got a second story.
huh?
Again, probably just because you're not seeing it here, but on the side walls, the west and the east, there are windows that have now gotten kind of interrupted
Yeah.
by that construction. That detail might show up later.
Yes. Six. So moving to the east elevation, again, we're trying to kind of take a lot of the additional elements that were put on there over the years off and clean it back up to kind of what it used to be. There's a kind of an odd porch just behind the front facade.
This is on the east elevation?
Yes. Yeah. Also, you'll notice on the east elevation, we've taken this back portion of the house, and we're planning on taking it off. Just because, one thing again, now I'm going back to ZBA. In their determination, we are only allowed to have a certain amount of square footage in this building by their determination.
Is that original, that piece
We
you're
don't
taking off?
think this is original.
It's just conveniently where you can't have the square footage, or
Well,
what?
We chose to take that portion off to accommodate the square footage. Again, this also has a third floor
Yeah.
on it that we're abandoning.
Uh-huh. But I'm concerned, I see that you're taking this big hunk off the building.
It's kind of a gambrel roofed.
So you think
Section.
that's just an extra, I just.
It was enlarged. Now, when that happened, we
so-
were
not sure.
Because, you know,
yeah.
we're having these conversations about
Yeah.
what's
That is-
allowed.
that is the
But
house.
we have a responsibility historically here, regardless of whether, just to because it doesn't fit in the equation doesn't mean that they couldn't give you, I mean, and that is what a ZBA is supposed to do, not all the rinky-dinky things that people want, 3 inches on something because they can't figure out how to make their roof pitched more, or whatever it is. But it seems to me that it would, that's a substantial portion of the building if that was put on later, but I don't feel good without Zach knowing, and that the reason for a variance is this kind of thing.
Would be to preserve what's considered to be a part of what is.
Preserve what's considered to be part of the extant building that's historic, and I think we have a responsibility to respect that.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yep.
So I think we need to look at that, okay?
Absolutely.
And maybe it's like, takes 20 seconds and everybody knows what's going on, but I don't feel good about just going like, oh, fine.
Yeah, no, we're more than happy to meet with Zach on site
Yep.
and
Okay,
walk
yes.
through and
Because
do some
I
investigating.
think,
Sure.
through this process, we're going to have some checking in for what's being saved and how it's being saved.
Absolutely.
Great. When you seem great about that, I'm not.
Well, I think it's important. I mean, these are contributing structures to the village. So
Right.
you
And they're
want to
right
make
at
sure
the
that.
gateway,
Yeah.
And I think you might want to point out that what is a typical repair to a gutter system that's not working well
You think?
is
Oh,
to
my
cover, yeah.
Yes.
And it's kind of amusing, it's referred to on the sheet as a Dutch gutter. I think the expression is a Yankee gutter. So the Dutch are blamed for enough, quite frankly, so let's not pull
horrible,
them into this
Gables.
also. But in any event, the easy fix for that is just cover the darn thing over, which is what's been done
That's
here.
what- yeah.
And I believe what you're intending to do is to open them back up again
Yeah.
and restore them.
Well, eliminate that kind of odd
That
piece of-
strange,
Yeah.
yeah, because the gutters are in there. I mean, they've done a lot of damage to the house, and so there's
That's
a lot of repair that needs
amazing.
to be done. But that is the details, so you don't want to leave it that way.
Sure.
For clarification on that east facade, the existing east facade, I believe, I just want to make sure that I'm not seeing something wrong, but I believe the dormers on the south side are actually missing from the elevation, right? They
Yes.
exist today.
They do
The
exist.
form is not being changed on those. dormers.
Correct. Those are just being repaired and replaced in kind. So now you can kind of see what the rear elevation looks like. This here would be the portion that would be removed and expose the actual original portion, which is kind of hard to see from behind the dormers and the chimney. Again, you can see a lot of these windows are inconsistent with each other. 6/6s, there are now French doors, and it's a little confusing.
A lot going on, yeah.
And again, we'd like to replace in kind. This kind of mimics the front of the house. These are on those 2 wings, so we'd like to rebuild those. And actually, they all had steps outside of them,
Right.
even though they were walled up, and the step was still there. Now, on this elevation, again, we'll cut.
What elevation is that?
This is the west elevation. This shows the elimination of that back portion again, and then also these, this dormer, which then was connected with kind of a shed roof, looked like an afterthought and was put on relatively, I guess, I would say in the past probably 30 years or so. And it's
Right.
not original to the structure. So we'd like to bring it back to its original form with just the 2 dormers.
removing the decks and the
Yeah.
balcony.
As you can see, all of these were kind of added on, I'm assuming, when they had individual rooms, they wanted to give each room a private deck, and we'd like to remove those as well and kind of bring it back to its original form.
Something more reasonable.
Yes, and I like the fact you said simplify this, because as you can see from the existing elevation, it looks incredibly busy and overdone.
And how deep is that set, I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the floor plan, just how deep is the setback on that, like in the upper left corner of DES 8? The setback of that south facade of the front portion of the building.
Oh, okay.
I'm not describing this well. So in that upper left corner you were just
I
pointing.
think I understand.
Yeah.
So this is the front
Yeah.
facade, so it drops back probably about 5, maybe
No, I
6
was
feet.
actually talking on the west side, from right where your finger is
Here
into the.
to here.
Yeah, it's about 20 feet.
Yeah,
or-
about 20 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Let's take this. And then there are the renderings. We did have one kind of question that we wanted to address with Zach, were the chimneys. The original chimneys now are painted white with black tops. We have them here as brick, but we're more than willing to paint them again if,
So are
once
the
we clean them up and fix them.
just on this building or on,
Whatever is existing on each building, we'd like to,
make them brick?
yeah.
That's
If
his
it's
call.
if it's the board's
Hard to
preference.
tell, I mean, you see both in the period. Again, early photographs would be helpful.
And there are no
But you-
early photos?
There must be
There
some.
must be
Isn't
some.
there a girl with the,
There must be
sitting
some.
on the outside? I mean,
I mean, aesthetically,
Twenty-
either solution is appropriate, I mean, to the architecture.
You know, it's just the diddling with it. I
So-
feel like we should, if there's any
Yeah.
way to know.
If we can, we'll keep trying to find
Right,
some
I hear that
information.
your intentions are good. I just feel like we, you know, before we get all down with this, we need to actually know
Yep.
what was
Right.
there. And admittedly, the condition of this entire situation is pretty, I'm appalled by what I see. But it's great that it's still there, and so it's just a matter of if we can respect what is historic and try to preserve it, or renovate it, but, you know, redo it, but whatever, I don't want to go off and just lop parts off buildings without knowing what we're doing.
Right.
Or change. I don't object to the way the chimneys look, but I would want to know what was the intention or what was there and when.
Do a little research.
Digging.
Yeah.
But that was your presentation was,
There's more.
Good.
Thank you. Yes, more to
you know,
come.
now we're getting to the part where I don't like the presentation so much.
These are the units.
Is there, yeah, if we could separate the presentation of this from the historic part. Go ahead.
Yes, let's start with this here. So, I'm sure you've seen the plan for this. So, what we have is we have a number of units in the back here. We have 5 what we call A units, which is 5 buildings. We have 1 building which we consider a C unit,
Thanks.
and then all the way in the back is the E unit
What happened to B and D?
Yeah, this is a little complicated.
over
You
here.
can share.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Here. I can actually.
They were rejects.
Right? All that.
What, I'm sorry. Unit, these are kinds of
is-
units? Like
yes.
A is a kind that has 3 bedrooms and B is a kind that has 2, is that what you're talking about?
Yes. So
Okay,
there's
sorry.
5 A units, which have 2 units in each building for the first and second floor. So we tried to play off the latch and the Terry Cottage using similar forms, but we did change the fenestration to 6/1, in a sense, trying to not take away from those 2 front buildings and keep them very unique, but at the same time making these slightly different. So we still have the dormers on the front. Again, this we plan on, do you have those renderings? We plan on using similar materials, but in different forms, where the Terry Cottage and the latch have painted white shingles. These we'd like to leave like a normal, or I shouldn't say normal, a stained shingle, which is kind of a silvery gray. Again, leaving the roof kind of a natural shingle and let it weather, and then using white trim with white shutters.
And what are these on the first floor? Oh, wait, we're in Unit A. Never mind.
Yep. Unit A, I see what you're getting at. Unit A has the same thing. The garage doors
Are brown?
are in the front. We can paint those white as well, or we can make
I'm
them
not even
mahogany.
sure it's so much that, because I think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but, and in Unit C, the 4 garage doors ganged up just hit you. I mean, does anybody else have the same
Yep.
sort of a gut reaction?
I was all for A,
that-
but when we got to
what do you-
C, that's,
You've got one C unit that faces the back of a motel, and it's set about 300 feet back from the road, 250 to 300 feet
Yeah.
back from the road. So this won't face the road.
No, I grant you that, and I know
I can-
that's, it just, the A unit is eye appealing.
yep.
The C unit, not so much.
I can tell you
So-
the intent was, because they're 2 units together, to put the garage doors on the outside takes up a lot of window space and a lot of space to
Yeah,
let light
yeah.
in. Where these are the locations where the units touch, and that center wall, you can't get any
Now,
any
do
light
all-
into.
To all units, but there are 2 units in each, right?
For C.
No.
For
C?
A and C. Well, C actually has 4 units,
Oh,
2
okay.
first floor and 2 second
One
floor.
per garage.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha,
So,
gotcha.
4.
Pull out the site plan so we can.
I think it's easy to
So,
get this
did you
straight.
actually do a rendering with white? Is it too much white? White garage doors? I do find that it,
Susan, would you mind if I just explain? So the A buildings, there are 5 of them. These are each 2 units attached, so 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. The E building is in the back. Those are 3. It's 1, 2, 3. And the C building is 4 units. It's 2 lower and 2 above. That's why you have 4 garage doors in that building.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no,
but I
our concern
understand
is
the
not
intent.
what's inside, it's what it looks like from the outside.
Totally understood, but just to
So,
answer the,
to have that big wall, like, that's a good third of the facade, no? On C, with
Yes.
garage doors.
Yes.
Well, I have a problem with that, as, I guess,
Well, could you cite the C building in further back? Because the C building is right behind the latch, right?
Yes.
So
It is.
if anything is going to be visible to the extent it is, and I grant you, Rob, you're right, it's pretty far back. But if anything's going to be visible, it's going to be the C, and that's, at least to my eyes, the least attractive of the buildings you've presented. If that was cited in the rear where you have the
E.
E, which is, where you have the E,
is there, I don't know, I'm sure you spend a lot of time on it.
we'll consider anything that you suggest. Our thinking was that when you drive into the site, the latch building will really, so you come in this way, and the latch building's really going to be what you see, and then you're past this. So unless you turn to the right, you're not really going to see it. Whereas this building was really important to us because this is the end cap of the site plan, and as you're coming down this driveway, you're going to be looking at this.
And if you put the C in the middle of the two, the three that are lined up over there, could that work?
Yeah, we'll definitely look at it.
He's, you know,
It might also
I think-
break, well, it's,
I don't go on your feeling that no one will, that you'll just drive past it. Because the first thing you'll be looking at of the new buildings is that building, which I find surprising, actually.
I think
I
from.
think it's also set back the furthest from.
Well, but we're not
the main-
talking about,
But-
this is not a huge,
Understood.
The other thing, if I'm putting myself at the hat
my
of,
patience.
as the hat of a buyer, when I drive in, my first impression is going to be something that looks like a townhouse. The one that has the 4 garage doors or whatever, it gives me a townhouse feeling. I mean, that's just my view as a customer, which is just my view. And I think you might have a better layout if you put it further back or in the middle of those other 3. But that's just me.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm not arguing with you.
That's
look
okay, you can. Other people have.
Can we dive into one of the unit types? I mean, I'm happy to have that conversation. Do we want to start with C or do we want to start with A?
Whatever you want, Rob, go for it.
Yeah.
I just feel
We're
like,
going to end up doing all of them, so
Yeah,
it's
I know.
it's
Yeah.
not like we're going to ignore anything in here.
no, I know.
But just in order. Sure, go with A.
Which is right, which is where, so that's what you were pulling up before anyway.
Yeah, can we just,
Just walk us through a little bit what's going on.
Sure. So again, we tried to make these look as residential as possible, using elements like a front porch. The garage door in this unit is set back slightly from that front element. The middle element here, what we tried to do, because it didn't really belong to either of these elevations, we tried to make it its own element, even though there's a center wall that divides these two. And then again, on the side, we tried to make it a little more residential by having a little change in gable widths. And then it's a mirror on the other side. And then the rear, trying to get more light in, and it's not visible from the driveway. We tried to kind of do something a little different back here. Again, using these gables with brackets to make it more residential.
The different, on the front elevation, there's a different roof shingle pattern, or shake pattern. I assume that's just to emphasize that it's a different elevation.
Show depth.
It's the same material.
Yes.
It feels to me like the setbacks of those little, the 2 connector sections, if you will, and the ridge height are skimpy. They don't visually create a whole lot of a little bit, I appreciate that, but I'm wondering, is there a reason why the ridge height can't be a little bit lower to emphasize the separation of those forms more? Are you trying to keep the same roof angle and?
In the back, we would be keeping the same roof angle. But I don't see why we couldn't change this roof angle to make it a little more.
It just feels
Shallow?
maybe a little flat or not divided.
You saying the roof angle or the roof height or both?
Well, I'm saying, I was wondering if it would affect the roof angle. If the roof were another foot or 2 lower, or the setback of those forms another, even 6 to 12 inches to create more shadow line, more depth.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
It feels like it's a little
Seems to be
in one plane, right?
constant
Yeah.
It's a little
problem.
bit in one plane.
Okay.
It also felt to me like the columns just feel a little heavy for the scale of the house. a shingle-style house, which I think this borrows largely from. It's got some Queen Anne forms too, but might have columns that weren't quite as heavy, but I'd really maybe defer to Zach on that. I don't know.
Well, that's a form you see. Oftentimes, though, they're slightly
Tapered.
upward. I mean, it's sort of, they're sort of stocky, and I think you need them to be that, especially if they're as widespread as you have them, which is fine. But if they were less substantial, I think they would feel like they're not going to hold it up.
Okay.
But I think you typically have if you're going for a real, architectural element from that period, it should slant up a bit.
Okay.
It's a detail that relieves the squat feeling of it if it tapers slightly.
Right, I don't mind. I think that's quite effective.
I think we've seen that replicated before in other designs
Yes.
in town.
I always start with the things that sort of bother me, but I really appreciate the materials. I like the fish scale touches in the tops of the gables. I think that's very nice. I like the sort of porch roof forms on the front elevation. I think are really pleasing. I did have a question just about the center rear gable in particular. So in the rear elevation, that center gable, something about that roof line was just not quite working to me. It's sort of roughly the same size gable as the other two, but it sort of
Yeah.
floats in the middle of that middle form and doesn't connect to the outer walls. And
Yeah, we felt that we had it as just a single roof
Yep.
plane, and it looked like it was missing something. So that's how we came up with that. We could take these dormers and bring those to the back if
that
something that.
or maybe paired gables somehow without it being too matchy-matchy. Just something about, I don't know if it bothers anyone else, but it's that center gable on the rear elevation just sort of doesn't meet the sides of the building and doesn't seem to relate to the rest of the architecture, but it's just something I noticed. Those are my comments. I think that a lot of the detailing is really nice and the materials look great.
Mhm.
Thank you.
So it's 17 units altogether?
Yes,
Plus-
17 total.
Yeah, 17 A, C, and E's. There are 2 in the Latch building, and then Terry Cottage is a standalone house.
So it's 19 units plus a house,
Yeah.
after much toing and
Correct.
froing.
What do you guys feel about the?
I don't know what to think about this one yet.
Which one?
I don't know what to think about all of it, because it's not like it's one thing. But these all are going on the same piece of property.
I'm kind of beyond absorbing all of this right now.
Me too. Well, they're not required, they're just
I
showing.
think.
We know it's going to take some
Like
time to digest.
Yeah, time to study
No,
and
really,
look at it, but
that's
I
why I
also
was sad that,
envision
because I thought the historic part we got through, but then when we get to this,
Do we have a survey to show where it's going, where they're going to be?
where's the survey? So the,
Clubhouse has the pool, right?
Yes. Clubhouse is here, and the pool is here. So the A units are these 5.
so they're the predominant.
Yes.
We're just, so, I don't know what to say. We're not, we need time.
Would you like me to go through the other?
Yeah,
Designs as well?
probably. Go
Okay.
ahead. You're here. You've got your presentation.
E.
We are listening. We just, it's a lot of information.
It is.
Some of, and it's different from the historic information, so it's
That's E, right?
Yes.
switching gears.
Yes, so E is the one all the way in the back that Steve
So that's
was
the big
talking
back.
about.
And those are big units, right?
Yeah, this is the one with three units in it.
Are those units bigger? What are the biggest units?
Square footage wise, I think they're actually a little bit smaller than the A's.
There's 3 units.
Sorry. Square footage wise, they're a little bit smaller than the A's, going by memory. They're deeper than the A's are. The A's are wider and less deep.
So the
So the
E's are,
the garage and the E, so how many, there's a garage at each, it's sort of got a shadow. The garages, they're all front-facing garages, right?
yes.
Correct.
Again, same as the A units, due to the two end units being on the end, we wanted to get as much light into these units as possible, so that's why we slid them inbound of the end of the building, rather than take up valuable space for light. The E units are kind of unique. The end units are accessed from the side of the building. That's why we tried to do the front porch on the side, where the center unit has the same or similar element of a porch, which also incorporates the garage door. And again, all these units would have the same type of materials
Right.
used. The shingles, the white trim, the brick chimneys.
Does anyone want to comment on the E's? Or are we just beyond that?
No, it's not that much. It's interesting, at least to me, that one of our main bugaboos is front-facing
Yeah,
garages
the whole thing is,
and on streets. Now, granted, this is an internal
Internal.
right-of-way, it's private, and I understand all that, but it's still hard for me to then look at these houses. Granted, they are townhouses, but there's a lot of garage there. I mean, at least 25 to 30% of the facade is garage. Yeah, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but that's I'm having a hard time accepting that. I don't know if there are any other solutions. I mean, I know you don't want to put in a common garage.
True, and unfortunately, like I said, the ends
Space
of the buildings are
situations.
Yeah,
prime real estate for light and
yeah. Yeah.
access.
Garages get more difficult with multifamily attached housing. And people want, I think it's reasonable to want to be able to be in an attached garage in any situation, so your options for,
People want to leave their car because they're not actually living here.
yeah,
And when this
For the most part, that's the way I read it.
you're right.
And when this property was first developed, and maybe, well, I think I may have answered my own question, is that actually separating the units into, rather than triplexes, or whatever the correct word would be, individual houses, I guess without, you'd probably have to give up a unit somewhere along the way.
Little windows,
More than one.
Multiple
They would
units, I
never
would
do
say.
that.
not right.
It would have been our preference, but we couldn't make sense of
They
it.
couldn't make money off that few, those few,
Well, you can make economic sense of it,
yeah.
is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, one house would be great.
Closer to the mic, please?
Sorry.
One house, oh yeah.
One house would have been wonderful, but
Didn't work out that way, did it? Yeah. Well, and they had the zoning, kind of the non-conforming, to be able to negotiate to have condos.
And we did at one point propose separate garage buildings and was rejected by the ZBA.
Really? Because it was you wanted them too
Felt it was
close to the property
too
line?
much massing.
Uh-huh,
Too many structures on the property.
well, that's the thing, you only get so many, right? Isn't that the name of the game? Yeah.
Looking at Unit E, the rear elevation, and the north elevation,
What page are we on? DES.
4,
DES 4.
Okay, thank you.
or E. It just seems that the connecting roof and the lower windows, the small windows underneath, somehow that doesn't look right. The roof looks bare. It looks more
Like it wants a dormer or something.
Maybe it needs a dormer, or, I think
always-
on the inside plan, is that empty space there, or could we get a dormer in there?
I don't see why we couldn't.
It just
Yeah.
looks unfinished, it's too much roof,
That's kind of what we were thinking on the A unit in that middle section as well, so.
yeah.
And there's also a gap between them, I'll just have to, there's quite a sort of large open gap
This
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Isn't that
Between-
what's on the side ones or the?
Yeah.
between the middle form and the first windows. I don't know if that's,
It's almost like that
There's
needs
something
to
we
be.
can put in there.
Well, what is
it
there?
doesn't need to be a window, I know they're expensive, but if there's some detail that could go in there to break up that two-story height of siding.
Like a trellis.
A tree.
Trellis.
A tree,
Yeah, it does seem,
a little plain.
Yeah.
it's weird. It doesn't quite,
Looks like the inside of the house is driving the outside look.
something's missing. Now, if they put dormers, that would at least, there is that blank space which-
Right.
on either
either
side of the central unit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the purpose of that is, there was a reason for that?
I'm sure there's.
Some reason, because it's
this is-
extremely symmetrical, except that there are these, all of a sudden, sort of off-center clusters of windows for the two side units. And the center unit is like the cheese stands alone, you know, there's something funny about that. I don't know what, there must be some inside reason for that. The garage? Thank you.
So we're talking about in here. So
Yeah.
there could be another window. This is a bedroom and a family room, so we could get,
Would you
Even
think that
small, like
there's
a
something
Accent
funny?
window or.
Or
Yeah.
something, there's a kind of huge
maybe it doesn't have to be a
blankness?
full window, maybe just a smaller double hung or something
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
Something to break up that,
The ones on the top of the gables on the
because
back there.
every other one of these,
And then the same in the second floor, we could also add
Well, there may be
something
some other
Number
detailing
one.
that could go, it's just that two-story height, you know, it looks like it's about 20 feet tall and 14 feet wide or so, 12 to 14 feet, it just feels blank.
Okay.
Where do we go next? C?
didn't we do C? Or were those the ones with the garages?
Yes, this is
Back to the garage.
the first building that you come to, behind the latch.
Right.
So again, this is a unit that has a unit on the first floor as well as a unit on the second floor, and that's why we have the four,
So those are
Garage
like
doors.
one-bedroom units? Two?
two.
Up bottom downstairs is, they're all three.
Three.
They are all
I'm
three.
just not, they're all three-bedroom
Yes.
units?
What we tried to do was soften the garage doors as much as possible, and we did put small pent roofs over these two to give them a little more detail.
Yeah, I see that.
In an attempt to, because I agree that four garage doors together is tough.
Especially in the middle of a building. Of
Yeah.
A fairly big building.
Unfortunately, putting them,
I hear
Again,
what you're
yeah.
saying, the light, I know why you'd want it not on the end, but I don't know what to say about that, I gotta think about it.
we haven't come up with a way to shingle them yet.
Do you have any flexibility on the overall footprint of this building, or are you set and maximize coverage and all that?
We're
We're definitely right
kind
at
of
coverage.
locked in on coverage. We can look into whether we can swap and move the C building elsewhere on the site plan, switch it with an A.
I was just wondering, I mean, if there was a way to set in the first floor of that garage underneath the little hip roof in the front.
To reallocate the
hip
So that it
roof
wasn't so prominent.
to get the garage, those middle garage doors back a little more. I'm just but there's maybe a lot of other ways to do it.
Did ZBA, I know we were kind of constrained to certain dimensions, but maybe,
We'll go back and look at it, I'm
Yeah.
not sure off the top of my head.
I mean-
But I understand what, we want to de-emphasize that as much as possible.
Yeah.
It might also help to
Unfortunately,
have,
landscaping's not gonna help because you have to drive the car into the garage. That's why people put them on the
I
side
mean, the other
and
thing
back.
is, do you have a flare at the bottom of the second floor entirely around this building, everywhere? Does it flare
Yes.
out? So there will be a flare above those two center garage doors?
we took that off.
There.
Yes, and what we did was we did molding across the top, just to kind of not really accentuate it. We thought that with that flare there, again, with these two pent roofs, it might draw your eye to it more. We can absolutely do the flare if that helps.
I can be a good critic at times, but I'm not an architect. But some detail in there that could just help further separate, create more of a shadow line, break up that elevation a little bit.
Sure.
I'm still bothered by the fact that I don't know how you get away, or I'm not going to try to figure out, that presents to me as an apartment complex. That could be anywhere on Long Island. I'll grant you it's nicely done, but it could be anywhere on Long Island, and it's in the middle of the historic village. We just spent, and I think everybody was giving you compliments, well-deserved, on your restoration efforts to the front, and it's a hard leap for me to go from that to this, and to look at garages facing the front, even though it's private and everything else. And whether the ZBA approved it, whether the planning commission approved it, I'm just not seeing it in the village the way it's there. So I don't know, I'll probably have to confer with Bo on what's constraints, but architecturally, it's not something that is a standalone I would vote to approve. So.
The other thing that stands out to me on C here, on DES2, is the sort of eyebrow windows under the two gables. Is that just that's for decoration, and the two sets on either side? There's like 3 paned.
These?
Yeah, those.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a typical form? I know you've used the eyebrow windows on some others. Is that just to add architectural interest? To me, I'm
Yes.
not sure it's necessary. To me, I'm feeling as though it actually might complicate a little bit. But I'm
sure Steve's happy to take some windows out. Save some money.
If the board agreed on that, that's fine.
I don't know. Do you see the one I'm talking about on the top of DES2? Two main gables facing us.
We have them on
those
the side gables as well.
Two sets of 3 windows on the third floor, basically, above the second floor windows. Just wondering, because the brackets are nice, the fish scale is nice, and they're not functional, I assume, right?
Are we,
You have them
He's talking
in
about
A,
these windows.
those don't bother me,
Yeah.
but we still got the garage doors.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the least of it. But I think
Work
it's
on the garage doors, I
distracting
think.
to have that stuff up high.
That's what I'm thinking. There's already some nice detailing up there, and it almost feels.
Oh, I don't mind those. The garage doors are another matter. All right. Have we gone, so now we're just going to the clubhouse, or
Yes.
did we do E?
yep, I do.
Sorry.
We did do E.
The clubhouse is basically for swimming. What is the clubhouse?
It's where the pool.
Swimming and
You can go
gym.
lounge by
And
the
the
pool
gym.
and go in the clubhouse.
Okay, well, that is a
And
standalone.
the fitness center.
Just put that right in the middle where those garage doors are and skip the parking. Would be good.
Build 10 of those.
You can. You're getting money. It's all about money.
There's a fitness center,
Things can be built.
a club room,
Okay, yeah, okay.
bathrooms, and an office.
Well, I think the clubhouse is cute. Nicely done.
Out of curiosity, did you think about carrying the gables north and south instead of hipping them?
We actually didn't, no. We
Okay.
just thought, we tried to make it
To
like,
begin with,
yeah,
to keep it small.
yeah. We thought that this being kind of really the add-on to the rest of the complex, we wanted to make this kind of as diminutive as possible.
Well, I think particularly in the west elevation, it looks really nice. It looks a little funny in the side elevations, but I know elevations always look funny. So, just curious.
So, can we adjourn this? But we need time to think about all this, obviously. And there were
Absolutely.
questions asked.
Sounds like there's some things you might think about possibly.
Is there anyone who wants to
Consider revising.
comment on these applications? There's no one now. Like your crew, as they say.
Just say, you said very early on, I appreciate the idea of using the weather shingles and just letting them stand apart from the painted houses up front. I think that's a smart idea, and I appreciate the materials and a lot of the consistent detailing. I think you've got a big job ahead of you. You've done a lot of, I mean, we already have had a big job, but this is really interesting, a lot of really good work.
I'm going to digest it.
All right, so,
It's a lot to take.
Thank you.
And then Zach has an assignment.
and,
A little
yeah.
bit.
We'll
I'll
contact,
follow up.
yeah, we'll
So,
contact you
do you think
later
the
on this week.
next meeting is, the 13th of May, good for you? Is it good for you, Zach?
We'll make sure that
So are you
someone's here.
asking us for an adjournment until May 13th?
Please.
Motion to approve applicant's request for an adjournment until our next meeting on May 13th on Beechwood Latch LLC, 101 Hill Street. So moved.
Second? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
We have extra copies of these.
You
We'll
wanna
keep the
keep
two
these?
stamped ones, but it's probably more useful to, we'll throw them out if you're gonna throw them out, but.
No,
Here.
we'll hold on.
We'll hold
You
on.
should hold on to them, but there's just, I hope that's not
We'll need
somebody
them
else's
again.
stuff.
Thank you.
And I had something I wanted for the next application, I lost it.
Louise,
Next, and finally, Louise Coral, 68 North Main Street. Relocate existing dwelling, demolish rear addition, construct two-story addition, exterior alterations, demolition of accessory garage. I had something I took that I gave another copy. Do you still have that thing I wanted to show you? From the, no, it was the thing I printed out from the guidelines. Oh, it's, no, it was that thing just the one paragraph from the architectural guidelines.
Are these new forms or your own?
They're the ones that, that my secretary gave me.
Okay. Just a different form.
Of posting and mailing?
Yeah, they're affidavits. Do you want to take it, but would you mind just taking a quick look at those, or? Do you know they're
All right,
all?
are they signed?
They're signed?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Yeah, yeah.
must have been swept up in
I
the,
know, I have to ad lib. Your name, please?
For the applicant, David Gilmartin Jr. from the law firm Farrell Fritz. I have Alex Latham, the architect, here tonight, and Mr. William Coral, who is one of the owners. The property here is located at 68 North Main Street, and the house is a contributing structure. It's both on the state and national registers. We're here tonight for a certificate of appropriateness to pick the building up or the house up and move it back, take off a later added little shed portion off the back, add an addition to it. I've put a survey here which shows the house is 15 feet off the property line now. We're proposing to pick it up and move it back to 40 feet. What's really pushing this request is we had an engineer come in and look at the house, and it's the original foundation. The foundation is basically crumbling. We're told it has to be replaced, and it's unsafe. So while we're replacing it, we thought it would be better to pick it up and move the house back to a conforming location. While doing that, we're going to rehabilitate the structure. So none of what you see on the exterior is original to the house. So this was an added-on addition here, which will remove and return to its porch. This spot right here. Mr. Latham has a picture that will show you the house from 1693, somewhere in that area. So we'll be able to show you exactly what it did look like. Much of the windows are all aluminum that seem to have been added in the 70s and 80s. The soffits are all additional aluminum. The shingles are also appear to be added after and are significantly deteriorated. So again, what we want to do is pick the house up, move it back, put it on a new foundation, and try and return it to its original splendor, if you will. Mr. Latham, who's the architect, will explain how we're going to pull that off. He is somewhat of an expert in historical structures, has done a lot of work with historical structures, and he served on the Huntington Historical Society and was the chair of the Buildings Committee. I'm going to ask Mr. Latham to come forward, and then when he's done, I think Mr. Corr would just like to talk to you for about 30 seconds. And we'll all be here to answer any questions that you have, but I ask Mr. Latham to come forward.
Yeah, let's hand these out.
Is that a small set?
Looks like they got
Oh, that's what we're floating in paper here.
How's yours?
Zach, you got a set?
Do you want to?
I'm freezing. I don't know if anyone else
It's
is
gotten
cold.
chilly up here.
I can turn the air off because it's going to be
Okay, I've got my board stand right here, so. My name is Alex Latham. I'm an architect in Northport. We have, I have a site plan here, which I've just colored so it's a little bit easier to see. It's really the same as showing the house setback 40 feet, which meets the current zoning setbacks. It also has dotted in the front of this where the footprint of the existing house was. And what our feeling is that logistically, when we move the house, since there's no footing on the stone rubble foundation now, and again, that's been deteriorating and is in poor shape. So we're actually going to move the house forward 20 feet, 15, no, not 15 feet, but probably about 10 feet, so that we can build the foundation behind the house and then move the house back onto that foundation, and then it will meet the current zoning code. I also have, let me have, I'll go up there.
So wait. The dotted line is what?
The existing footprint.
You can see the existing footprint right in the front here.
Right, and I didn't see, and you're adding on to the existing,
Yes, we're adding on to the rear of the
I know
house.
you're trying to add on to the rear, but are you changing what is the extra of the existing footprint? The dotted line, there's this considerable amount of, I looked at this pretty carefully, but now this
So we're adding on 1,500.
Yes, the colored brown, the dark brown is the footprint of the new house. And then it has a porch in the back, which is gray, and a porch in the front, which is gray.
Right, but in the first brown form.
Yes.
The dotted line is the original house?
Yes.
And what,
It's
and you
the-
want to add on all this other extra stuff?
No, we're just adding on, here, let me show you.
I looked at this, but it doesn't,
1,500 square feet.
The brown, the beginning part of the brown is the existing house that we're picking up and pushing back. So this first
that
part
whole
of the brown.
form, okay.
Right,
Yeah,
so
that's the
the
existing
current house.
And then the double hash mark behind it?
Yes, I is the addition.
Yes.
But what is the dotted line in the first brown form with the single?
That's the leftover, that's the footprint of the existing house. So the footprint of the existing house, where it says 15 feet, then it steps back and all the way back so that it's basically, the footprint of the
Oh, I
existing
see.
house is within where the new house is.
Right, so they have a shadow here of what
So he's saying
the old
this is where
house,
they-
the old addition would have been.
Yeah.
Right.
You see the shadow here?
Yes, put up.
And that fits into the dotted line.
That fits into
Oh,
this.
oh.
Right, so this is all the original house. They've just taken it and they've changed the angle by about 20 degrees.
Yep.
And they've moved it back some 25
That's good.
feet.
Yep.
And so the addition sort of wraps around it's about 50% larger than the existing, addition. See what I'm saying?
One other thing about the brown form. Okay, so that there's a single hash mark in the front which shows the existing house.
That's what I was asking.
And then the
Right.
darker portion in the hash mark
Is
is
the-
showing the old addition that
Right.
we're taking off of.
Right.
But it's where it would be if you moved it
Right.
with the new
Yes.
house.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that's coming down and being replaced by the
The new addition,
in the back.
correct. So that in this photograph, you can see this one-story addition in the back of the house.
Right,
And so that's coming off.
I get that. Right, I looked at this really carefully. It just seems more confusing than necessary to me. I don't know why.
I'll hand these out too. So in addition to pushing the house back to 40 feet, we're also aligning it with parallel to the lot line as well.
Historically, obviously, the house and houses of that vintage were built on the street and would have been parallel to the street.
Right.
You can't, well, you would, to move it back would mean
Thank
then
you.
you'd be angling into the
Same
Yeah, into the side yard setback.
side
yes.
lot. Zach, historically, is that a significant
It's pretty
element
far.
changing the angle, or?
Yeah,
It is, and I think, obviously, it is on its original foundation, as you pointed out, and that's structurally a problem now,
This is an old
perhaps.
photograph.
But the way it's situated now is its original
right.
Right.
siting.
So it's not quite parallel to the street now.
And it's,
Well,
it
it's
it
largely
actually
parallel.
is.
It
I
is
mean,
parallel.
It's not, it's a little off.
Yeah.
It's a little off, but it's not as off
Right.
as you would
Yes,
propose.
yes.
And if you look up the street, that wonderful, very early house, directly opposite Bowden Square, that faces to the south, that larger house, is also very close to the street. That's,
Yeah, people didn't want to,
yeah, I almost feel as if getting a lawn out front is not exactly what the village house is all about. It seems to me that taking advantage of having the house that close to the street gives you that much more property to the back that's useful, which is not relevant to the history of it, but it is on its original site, and I think that's
well,
kind of
when you
desirable.
move a historic building, its designation as
Yeah.
historic can be
Well-
diminished, is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
So that's always, makes me nervous.
I'm also always concerned about the way it gets to where it's proposed to go. because I know we've had some disappointments.
At this
And-
late hour, yes.
And the fact is that, obviously, in your presentation, it looks perfectly happy on its new footings, design-wise. But the issue is, how does it get there? And the lifting, and the transit, and the up, and the new elevation, all of this is, an intervention in the house. And the designs that are proposed do not address the method. So I am also concerned about that.
What do you mean the designs being
Well, I'm saying
proposed do not address the method?
The final resting place for the house on its new foundation
Mhm.
doesn't describe the way that it gets there. And that's an issue, because you're picking up a building and you're moving it someplace. It doesn't matter whether it's being moved 5 feet or 50 feet, and it puts it at risk. And so the design that's presented, the elevation, does not show the method. It doesn't show the means by which it's going to get there and that it's going to safely get there. The design doesn't show that. All it shows is what it looks like when and if it does get there. And I think that's not something that the code specifically addresses, but that's of concern to this board.
Are you?
How does this, because we've lost some on the way.
Right. So,
Oh, so you're concerned about the logistics and the
Correct.
methodology of moving it, that it stays intact?
right. Have you had an engineer look at the structure of not just the foundation, but of the building itself? Will it
Yes,
survive
he has,
transit?
and I think that it will survive transfer. I know that the floor joists are compromised in the house. I don't think that that's a death knell to moving the house. And I know, having moved some houses in the past, that there's been issues where I thought it was going to be incredibly difficult to move, and it wasn't. And I think that there's enough structural integrity of the house that it can move. We certainly do need to address replacing or sistering next to existing floor joists to make sure that it's structurally sound and that, obviously, that it's safe to live in.
But sills and posts, you think, are okay, or you have
Well, there's some
reason to
termite
believe-
damage in the sills and so on, but I know that, there's different ways in moving the house where you can really tie into the walls of the house as opposed to the floor itself to help brace the house so that it stays structurally intact. And even if it was, even if we had to add some plywood to give a diaphragm to support the floor joist so that it doesn't rack and twist, and so that we can brace the house up, I think that it shouldn't be a problem. We're also taking off that back section, which if we were going to move those two together would be, not really appropriate. But since it's the structure of the house, the main part of the house, I think that will make the move. And it's certainly our full intention to move the house intact. We're not coming here today and saying, oh, we're going to try and move the house and then all of a sudden lose it. That is certainly is not our intent.
No, that was,
No, not that you're saying that, but I just
No,
want to,
that would-
just let you know that.
but the
Since
village
that's
has
been a problem.
lost, I can think of 4 buildings.
Really?
And because they were not properly prepared for the move. So in other words, if there's any concern about that first floor tier of framing, then that entire first floor has to be cribbed so that it's a solid, not a hollow. Because when it gets lifted, it's lifting a solid, not a hollow.
Yeah.
So there are techniques of doing
Yes,
this. I'm
yeah.
just saying that the right understanding of this has to be brought to this, and that doesn't show up in designs. There's just no
Oh, yes,
representation of
yes.
that.
I
And
haven't-
think that's something.
I haven't drawn that per se.
Of course not,
Yes, right.
but I'm just
So-
kind of pointing that
My-
out. That's getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, because that gets to the,
So my issue is more fundamental. In fact,
yeah.
it becomes larger the more I think about it, which is that your attempts are made to restore the house to its original look is laudable. The concern is that it's being moved, it's literally being taken out of context, and that in the era that this was built, in the location, there were village houses. And there were village houses that were close to the street. The streets were probably stone and dirt. And it was just the nature of 19th century buildings, and surely buildings before that, that they were close onto the street, and that represented the village architecture and siting. By moving it further back, we sort of then move it into an era of being a little bit more suburban with a front yard and landscaping, and that's not a village house. And this is right near Bowdoin Square, which we're going to have probably some issues to deal with. And I think it bespeaks to the historic setting and time that those village houses, in the context of their siting, remain as such. So I'm having difficulty with the move, let alone the issue that stuff, so that usually starts with an SH, can happen. And to Zach's point, some things have happened, and I know that's not your intent. I mean, this is a beautiful effort to maintain and restore a house, but we, the village, is losing an historical reference by moving it, literally moving it out of context.
I understand that. One of the issues logistically, again, in working through the move, is the fact that in order to build a new foundation and to get, we're going to have to dig a footing, we're going to have to dig, for the basement level, we're really felt that, we want to move the house once, and so by lifting it up and just sliding it, just moving it forward and not having to build the foundation underneath it, and to build a new foundation easily and clearly behind it, that we could then move the house back there and set it down on a full foundation and have full access to do that.
Let me just, one thought. I spent a lot of time in Providence, Rhode Island, some of which I even remember when I was in college. But in the east side of Providence, many historic houses. You may be familiar with some of them on Benefit Street and so on. And during the 4 years I was up there, I must have seen a dozen houses picked up, foundation underneath, they jacked it up, picked it up. Maybe it ended up being a little bit higher than it was originally, but boop, set right down, and that was it. So I'm not an engineer, I'm not a house mover, I'm not a restoration expert, but
It's not a
I'm not
problem.
sure that it has to be moved in order to build it.
Foundation.
Well, they could slide it backwards and build the foundation and move it forward. I mean, that's
I
really
mean, part of the
not a-
foundation that you're proposing now sits under the existing house. So you're going to have to do, I mean, you can't just have one move. It's not possible to, unless you're doing some form of building a foundation under at least part of the house, because part of the new foundation sits under the existing house that you're preserving. So if it can be done for a portion of it, you're not proposing something that can be done with one move without building foundation underneath the existing
Well,
house.
I think we should get back to the fact that whether or not it should be moved, regardless of the logistics, that's really their problem.
I was just curious to know what the purpose of moving it was. It doesn't, just to be more compliant.
Suburbanize it? I mean, what is the
Well, the
purpose?
setback,
That's a
to
good
get to the
question.
regular
It was to conform to zoning, but I understand it's a historic structure.
historic.
But I think when it was built, they didn't have Range Rovers that were coming at the dead end of Bowdoin Square.
Bad.
Well,
I mean, but this is a
but you have to
historic
be able to
village.
live, I understand that.
There's room
But
here to get the
There's
Range
got to be
Rover.
some accommodation to what has happened in today's society. And this dead ends at Bowdoin Square, which a very popular restaurant is. So we have cars coming in that put their headlights exactly into this structure, into the living room. We want to go through the process and we want to save it, but there's got to be, some carrot at the end of the stick to be able to do this. And that privacy issue is one. Secondly, we have to upgrade the septic system. Obviously, septic systems go in front yards, not in backyards. There's no ability to do that in this case as it currently exists. Again, you have to think about the modern times and we have to adapt.
You couldn't get a variance for the septic to be in the front yard?
Have you been to the health
We're
department?
not talking about impossibilities. I don't think that just, pinning us against the wall. This is a historic structure, and there are a lot of considerations. So I feel our consideration is that we have a responsibility to be respectful of the history of these few buildings that are left in an area where some have been restored and where it's really looking up down there, I think.
Right, but I don't think you can do that in a vacuum, and I think you have to think about the impacts
Okay.
that are happening
Right, well, that's
outside
what
of
we're
this.
thinking
And I think that we have done an extraordinarily respectful job. We hired an expert, we found an old picture, we have tried to duplicate it exactly. We have proposed to change the entire exterior of this to make it look exactly like it was. Right now, it's only the structure that looks like what was there. Everything else is different. So we have tried to do that, but there has to be some benefit in doing that. And the privacy issue, I think, is a significant issue, and I think the board respectfully needs to consider some of the changes that have happened in society since the 1700s when this was built.
Well, I respect your advocacy for accommodating the current times, the current vehicles, but at the same time, there are no coulds, must, or shoulds that in the code that say, as you do. Now, I appreciate the fact that you say it's could or should be part of our consideration, but there are no coulds that say we have to, because there are now Range Rovers on the street, move the house back. There's nowhere written in the code. What is written in the code is we are to preserve and we are to go by the guidelines by the Department of the Interior. And so I appreciate, and I know, Dave, you're an expert in this field, and I appreciate your advocacy, but there are no coulds or musts in this situation. If anything, there's a must and a should and an obligation on this board to preserve the historical context of the structures in the village, especially one that's a contributing structure, especially one in that area, which is the heart of the village when it was a community and the houses were placed close to the road. And anybody who bought the house in the historic district and knows the nature of historical houses and the context of houses when they were built and where they were sited is a steward of that property now in this time.
Again, I think that there has to be some accommodation.
There doesn't have
There
to
should be an
We'd
accommodation.
like there to be an accommodation,
certainly
and I
would.
appreciate your advocacy.
But I think that there should be, especially in light of what is going on here and the attempts to maintain and save this structure, which has been significantly changed since its original construction.
Can I just ask a question? Is it possible to rebuild the foundation by just jacking the house up and then doing it? Do you have to move it?
We don't have to move it as far to get a foundation under it. It's certainly, I think it's better for us to move it so that we can get the whole foundation done since it's being added to the existing footprint. So that, that's been our opinion in proposing this and also restoring it. Since the existing porch is not original, or what's left of that certainly isn't original, so the original porch the existing porch will come off, so it's just the house minus the porch, minus the addition in the back that is going to be left. And, we felt that moving that back was going to help us, moving the foundation back and building that as a whole was going to help us do a better job.
So, yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to.
No. I was going to address your
Well,
situation there.
It's interesting to me that really the whole house is still there. So that's a wonderful thing. You have the house. Okay. There are some very obvious alterations that have been done in the kind of the modern period. Interesting, when the house was photographed in 1979 for the inventory and the blue films and all that jazz, all that work had already been done. So that was done in the 60s or 70s. The porch is still there. Understandably, you might want to, in the work, you might want to take it down and reconstruct it. I think it's important to see, this is a wonderful photographic document that you've discovered, which is fabulous. Important to point out that there are 3 posts holding up the porch, not 4. So, and one of them you have, okay, with its brackets and all that jazz. So you have so much to work with. But it's a great document. Of equal concern to me, what's been proposed is the scale of the back extension, because it's overscaled. So, and getting to the things that you all concern yourself with, is that that's really quite large in proportion to the original house. And what I'm going to suggest is that you need to bring that down, height-wise.
Yes, so
massing-wise.
the architectural guidelines make it very clear that any addition to a historic structure, especially one that's of this nature, that has a lot of original characteristics, is that it should be subservient to the historical house. And so it doesn't, your addition doesn't even set back from the sides very much, and it also is higher, the gables in the back, that double gable thing. I don't have the, for some reason oh, there we go. So here's the architectural design guidelines for historic districts and landmarks, page 13. Massing defines the shape of a structure, which in turn suggests the volume of the building's interior. Alterations or additions to historic houses historically followed the principle of additive massing, adding smaller ells and wings at the rear or sides so as not to overwhelm the original part of the house. Additive massing retains the basic scale of the building and its relationship to other buildings on the street. That is from the Southampton, it's on the website under the building department, and this is something that we follow. I'd be happy to give you this if you'd like it.
Right, no, I understand that.
So, but your addition is as big, if not bigger, than the original house, isn't it?
It's not as big, but
It's close.
it's, what I've done is I've stepped it back on both sides, so
2
that...
feet?
2 feet on one side,
I don't
yes.
know. It's not stepped back enough to...
But you're not going to see it, I mean, that's why I haven't shown it here, because you don't see it when you're looking at the house straight on.
Yes,
And that's
but
the other
that's not
reason
the
why-
only view of the house. That house
Right.
sits up where you can really see it, which is one of the good parts of that house.
That's why I showed the 2 colored renderings from the streetscape, which are very accurate with regards to the scale of what you will see or not see. It was one of the other reasons, by moving the house back, that it gets screened from the Coral Brothers office side, where you hardly see any of the house, of the addition, but you see everything of the house. And with the step back and with the building that screens it, where Coral Brothers office is, really diminishes that to a great extent. And then on the other side with the hedge and everything else, that when you move the house back, that it really diminishes to a great extent the new addition, where the house is prominent and the addition isn't prominent. I really think it helps diminish that by moving the house back.
It doesn't solve the problem of the massing of the addition, which is completely against the rule that I just read. You know, we have these guidelines for a reason, not just, I didn't come up with that out of nowhere.
No, I understand.
And, you know, we really pretty much stick to that around here.
And it's a full 2-story house. I mean, sometimes, you know, we have a problem if the original house is really small. If it's a 1-story house or 1.5-story, enlarging it is very challenging because you're not getting much. But in this case, you do have a full 2-story house with a full attic above that. It already L's, so you've got a fairly good-sized house to begin with. I just feel that the scale of this addition, which stretches to the back almost as long as the front, kind of overwhelms that. And I understand that by moving it further back on the property, you're just kind of moving that all to the back of the property, and from the street, you're not going to see it as much. But I don't really feel that that's a justification for moving a house back either. I mean,
So
it
there are
is
two
justified.
issues, right? The location, the siting, as they say,
And
and the size and massing
I
of
also
the
don't find
addition.
this exterior brick chimney to be, I don't know, that whole back extension, if it were a freestanding house or attached to something else, would work, but it's aesthetically, that massive exterior chimney, the sort of modern and
Left to
interesting
side.
arrangement of windows, it all
Well,
just.
that was the differentiation from the
Right,
existing
no, I
house.
understand that as the, but.
By stepping it back and by doing that certainly differentiates the new from the existing, so that you do get to have the house, the addition that's stepped back differentiates itself architecturally, as is suggested. And again, I think that it's not, when you look at it in elevation, it looks much bigger than when you're going to see it in any type of perspective, unless you're standing on the side of the house on the property. From the street, you're not going to see that.
That-
One of the things I know that the Department of Interior standards just referred to them, we're not bound to follow them, but we're asked to consider them as a factor in our decisions. And I know that they often encourage the idea of connector forms with, noticeably different either ridge lines or heights or, very different architecture to connect then a separate form
Right.
as an addition. And I think part of, in addition to the height here, it's the fact that these two large masses are just married right together, which will, and I respectfully disagree with your assessment that even if it were moved back, that you wouldn't see this from the side, no matter what the screening is. All of the planting could go tomorrow in a hurricane. And from either direction, I think you will see this. And the fact that they're right next to each other, in addition to the higher ridge line of the addition, it feels like, there's a concept of subservience that is featured in the Department of Interior standards as well, and that's not coming through here. It's feeling as though you've got a new house that's trying to swallow an old house a little bit.
Well, I think that's a little extreme, only because it's not, I understand where you're coming from, but it's just, this isn't swallowing this addition by any way, shape, or form, and the details are much simpler, too, that, again, it differentiates itself from the existing house without having any shutters or any of the brackets or any of the details and so on. And again,
More
stepping,
farmhouse looking.
beg your pardon?
It's got more of a sort of farmhouse
Simpler, I
rather
didn't
than
want
four
to.
square.
Yeah, and I certainly didn't want to take some type of glass connector where you would do that, because that would just be, I felt that simpler and plainer was going to be much stronger differentiation than trying to do something that just was totally out of context with
Well, and I'm not saying
the
glass,
architecture.
but you could have a one-story connector for 15 feet, and I'm not trying to design the house, but I'm saying there are other ways to use the connector concept without going to ultra-modern or glass, or 2 stories, so that it creates a visual separation of the masses,
Well,
not
but
just material separation.
That doesn't really solve the fact that, from my perspective, I appreciated that you simplified it.
Yep.
I just felt that what I saw then was yet another, basically, house jammed on the back with a higher ridge line, which really is against the principles that, even on the existing extension that the people had built, it was smaller. There was,
Well, I understand your concern about the ridge line, and I thought that it was going to be better to go with the same ridge pitch or roof pitch than changing the pitch. It'd be easy to lower the ridge
But
line.
what
I
was
could
your
even lower,
thinking to make it higher when there's a historic house in front of it? It really confused me.
because it's only negligibly higher, number one, and number two, when you're on the street and you're at a lower elevation,
You
you're
can't see
not
it?
going to see it. You're just not, when
But it
you're
just
looking up
seems
at it like that.
But from the side?
From the side, it's an elevation which is, a little bit distorted anyway, because it's showing everything straight on as opposed to in perspective.
Well, between
I could lower the plate by a foot or two and lower the ridge so that the ridge could be lower, and probably have a more marked effect by doing that, because the plate, right now I've aligned the eaves, right? So there is a little bit of a stronger relationship with the eaves aligned, that if I lowered the plate height, let's say 1.5 feet or 2 feet, and that lowers the ridge so that you're not even going to see the ridge even from the side as being taller, that would make a big difference and would still work with the overall program requirements of, having this be, a nice house to live in.
So, for instance, A9, so you're showing the original house,
Other side.
and then this extension, and this looks bigger than that, to me, with just a glance, which is certainly,
Well, and
in
again,
volume, really.
if I lowered that plate height by 2 feet, that would make a tremendous difference, I think, in what you're saying that your concerns are.
Well, but they're like concerns from Albany or from our architectural guidelines.
I understand.
I mean, they're not just something I dreamed up out of nowhere. These are our rules, things that we have to apply to every application that comes forward.
I
They're not
understand.
arbitrary, sir.
I understand. I'm not
Okay.
saying at all that they're arbitrary.
Okay.
But your addition is not subservient to the,
I understand. I thought that with the street perspectives that I did, which I spent a lot of time, and the reason I have the photograph there next to, I traced over the photograph and made it as accurate as I could within a couple of feet as to, I'm not trying to visually fool you or make this look like something it's not. And those are very accurate sketches.
Can I ask a question about these? Do you mind?
Sure.
So this is the south elevation.
Yes.
And I'm seeing in the proposal down here, the roof line of the addition.
Yes.
Coming into sort of telescoping out of, in one way or another, the roof line of the back of the original house here.
Yes.
But this is a flat roof. Is this a new roof section here? Are you reforming?
You're not gonna see the flat roof, you don't see the flat roof in the photograph.
But you don't see does this gable carry all, I know it does on the other side, carries all the way to the back here? And there's a roof form, there's a southern version of this roof form coming off the ridge line that I'm just not seeing back here, is that right?
Yeah, it's present on the other side, but not,
But why do I see it so prominently here and not anything in there at all? Something's not adding up. Is it just perspective on the?
part of it's definitely the perspective.
No, you've got,
Does that angled roof on the southeast corner come out over, do you still keep the same flat roof for some period of time?
Oh, no, where there's a flat roof
Yeah.
there, it doesn't go all the way across,
Right.
okay?
I understand, but
But I was filling that in.
that's what I'm saying. You
Yes,
are
I'm
filling it
sorry.
in.
Yes.
That's the question.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. But it's, okay. And how does that ridge line then meet up with the, because does that give you two ridge lines, or does it give you a flat roof section
Rob,
over
if
the
you
old?
look at this picture here, you get a better,
Thank you.
Yeah, you see, there's still
get
that
a better
gable.
view. That flat roof section is a later, sort of like a sunroom type,
That was just
Understand.
jammed on there.
Understand, but, okay.
yeah, so you can see the relationship of the roof.
So are you changing, though, the whole gable on the back?
I just added a little bit more roof on the back to make those meet more comfortably, again, because it was the back of the house.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
I did add a little bit more roof there, yes.
Okay.
So, but I think even in looking at that drawing, or even both drawings, and that if I lowered the plate so that the eaves don't align at all, and it lowers the ridge, that would make a big difference, and make this much more subservient than what I was trying to do just with the materials and the design of the house being simpler.
One final thing is that the front porch should not be supported on a brick foundation. That's kind of a later,
No.
that's part of the commercial, right?
No, but there seems to be, let me see if it
I mean, that's
shows.
a relatively small thing, but I'm just saying, it's a Victorian house, and Victorian houses, porches aren't built on brick foundations. They're, they're supported on wooden posts going around, probably cedar or something.
Oh, as far as it being a
Cypress.
wood porch, not a stone porch.
Exactly. So even though that's what you have now, but your intention is to restore it,
Well,
which is great.
It was
And-
something that I couldn't tell from that photograph.
No, you can't see it in the picture.
And certainly if we were going to do, like a porch, a wood porch,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, we
Right.
could easily do
I
that.
understand. It's a detail, but I thought now's a good time to mention it.
There is brick, there appears to be brick, and you can see it in this one photograph, brick veneer on the foundation. And as far as I could tell, it looked old and possibly original. I mean, you might have another opinion on that.
Well, it'd be easy enough to go in the cellar and see. I mean, the foundation for the house sits beneath the front wall of the house, it goes straight across.
Right.
And the porch is just supported on wood.
No, and the
Was.
porch, yes, but I'm
Yeah.
talking about the foundation itself, because what I'm showing is brick veneer on the foundation that's exposed around the house, on my elevations I'm
Sure.
showing
In-
now.
Right.
And so, if, I mean, the choice would be, I don't want to have exposed concrete, as the finish underneath. So I was going to go, I'm
No.
proposing brick veneer
Right.
underneath the siding, from the siding to the grade.
Sure. On the foundation for the house.
Yes, but not, we can switch, the porch can be changed out to wood, it's not a
Of
problem.
course, right.
I've also, tried to emulate these columns, and we want to repeat these columns as much as possible. Now, I understand that there's only 3 columns in the photograph. I went back and forth on that and had I decided to go with the 4 just because it aligned with each one of the bays, of the vertical bays of windows.
Yeah.
If you felt that the 3, that was my kind of decision, but if you wanted us to go with the 3, it's not a problem at all to do that.
I'm only suggesting you have this wonderful document that you have found, which is most projects don't have. And what's unusual about this house, if you look at it, those windows don't align
I know.
first floor to the second.
Yes,
And so, obviously, you'd rather, as an architect, you don't want a post in front of the window. Well,
Well-
the fact is that that window to the left, to the right, of the door, was actually right next to the door.
yes.
And there was a wall behind that center post.
You think so?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can see that there were 3 posts, and that was all on
Yeah,
purpose. And it's
and the
rather
windows
unusual.
weren't aligned
You have to
with,
rebuild the whole thing anyway.
with-
So, that first floor was removed when the commercial storefront went in.
yeah,
So you have to rebuild that lower wall. And it's an interesting detail. It's
quirky.
different. It's quirky.
Yeah, it is.
So, and it allows for 3 posts instead of 4.
Yeah.
As it is. It's an interesting detail.
On the elevations, on the black and white elevations,
Yeah.
I have noted if a window's in a new location,
Mhm.
I've noted it with an N on it.
I see, that's what
And
the end is.
Yes, so there's 2 windows on the side, on the north side that I've added. Or if it's being relocated a little bit, I did note that, I was relocating these windows in the front as well.
I think you need a report from Zach, and you need to move forward.
Right, I agree.
Can I just ask?
We have a minor report, we have, he wrote
Right.
The purpose of that was just to sort of,
a summary. Okay, so
Right.
Zach's going to do a more thorough investigation for
Zach?
us.
Do an on-site.
Right.
Yeah.
Could I also ask that you research the garage as well?
oh, yeah.
The part of, this picture is your best friend and your worst enemy also. Because when I look at this picture and I see where those people are and I see the fence on the street, it bolsters my position. In the same way, that little garage at the end also speaks to an era when somebody had I don't know whether that was a horse barn or whether it was, but if you could look at that and see its date as well, because I don't want to simply dismiss that, because it speaks to the character of the entire complex.
All right, so Zach's going to do a site visit, and I guess I'll coordinate with you.
Well, did you want to say anything?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Corral. Not what you thought it was going to be.
Said I had 30 seconds?
You have more than that.
Someone said I had 30 seconds.
If you're going to buy drinks, you can have
25.
as long as you want.
Okay, there we go. My name is Bill Coral. I'm born and raised here in Southampton. Greetings to the board. Thank you for your time. Commitment to ensuring that Southampton Village retains its special character. We bought the building about 10 or 12 years ago. It came on the market. We knew the owners. Wonderful people, the Wagners. Had a little repair shop in the back doing reupholstering. So we own the building next door. We're building contractors here in Southampton. This is our 99th year. We've made it this far, so we're proud to say that.
This will be your 100th anniversary.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You stole my...
I'm sorry.
So, we didn't really have any specific plans for it, but after a dozen years, we thought let's breathe some new life into this great house. So the team has been assembled, and we really appreciate your input, which is valuable and appreciated. And I think we're making some progress. So we've had a robust dialogue, and we look forward to moving forward. So collectively, right? Thanks for your
Hope so.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So are you asking,
Yes.
Yes.
Baking it.
do I have a motion to approve the applicant's request for an adjournment until May 13th, our next meeting, on 68
So
North
moved.
Main Street?
So moved.
Second, aye.
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 Great, thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Motion to close the meeting?
We have 180 Great Plains LLC.
Oh,
Oh,
Wait, you
we
weren't
called
here.
earlier and you weren't here.
Oh,
Okay.
my God.
okay. Well, let's,
All night.
really?
All right, well,
Yeah,
we called it, but no one I have no show written down.
I've been sitting in the back all the
I said, let's, okay,
Okay.
this should be easy.
180, I don't know. 180,
Oh, come on, the guy's here.
yeah, I'm tired.
I know,
Sorry.
but I'm sure he is too.
Let's just approve it and go home.
180 Great Plains Road LLC. 180 Great Plains Road. Construct pool cabana and tennis court bathroom with pellets. This is this modern pool house.
Yes.
You want to give me all this stuff here.
Oh, okay.
Is there posting and mailing?
Yes. It's in there.
Great.
You want to just maybe check this out because I have to go
Okay.
with this. Here's this. And your name?
Lyle Pike.
I don't want
I've
this.
already seen it.
I've already looked at this 12 times.
Another.
So, okay. It's a pool house, you ready?
Oh, my God.
So,
I looked at it.
I don't know what I'm so
You ready for
tired.
Miles? Miles, right?
Lyle.
Lyle.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So it's 800 square foot pool cabana, cedar siding, flat roof.
And then a matching outhouse? for the-
Yes, tennis cabana.
Little bathroom for the tennis.
What?
Oh, the other way, Lyle.
Can you
rotate
turn
the-
it to face us? Yeah,
Yep.
The color, all the renderings.
they shoot it for the record. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Sorry.
That's
Great.
okay.
I don't see the tennis court bathroom.
Where is the tennis pavilion located on the plan? It wasn't cited on the,
Oh, it's
Site
right
plan.
in front of the tennis court.
right in front of which direction from the tennis court and how close, because it
It's,
wasn't on the site plan?
Towards the house, so it would be in front of, there's a pavilion that goes here. It wasn't drawn on.
Yep.
So it would be right here.
About how far off the tennis court? Can you just estimate? I'm not going to hold you to it, but
30 feet?
But it's not on this that you gave us, right?
No,
It's not.
it's on the plan, but somehow it didn't make it onto the survey.
It's not on the site plan, but is it in these, sorry, in here? The actual little house?
Here it is.
It's on the larger,
Oh, yeah,
the
okay.
larger plan.
I thought I said.
what, now the house is shingle style, and there's
Yes.
a Mediterranean stucco tiled roof guest house.
Yes.
So what, how does the modern form of these fit into this? What's the choice?
This is next to the Mediterranean-style house. It's to the west side, so it's shingled in the back, and then it faces the pool, which also has, the house has glass doors in the back, and it pretty much matches the house style. And then if you take a look at,
Style house, sorry, I missed that.
it's only modern in the sense it has a flat roof and glass doors,
And black trim.
black
The
trim.
house has none of those.
We've just
I
described
get it.
the whole
Okay.
thing.
I can change
Except for
that,
shingles.
change it to white trim if that helps.
No, I don't think that makes it look nicer.
But it's 90 feet off the road, 90 feet off Great Plains Road. It's pretty much in the yard. There's 10-foot high hedges on the road, and within a half mile of the property, the house next door, which was also part of the estate, 65 Cooper's Neck. I have pictures. They have black windows that are total glass, and it's modern. If you go over to Halsey Neck, I think it's 175 Halsey Neck, house is totally modern, which isn't, these are all in the historic district.
I don't think that's what he's asking. He's
Okay.
asking why you have a modern pool house in what he considers a more traditional shingle-style house. Main house, right?
This will be visible through the parking area of Great Plains, and just wondering what it just seems incongruous with both of the existing, very sort of predominant and visible styles on the property already. Is there
It has the same cedar siding as the
Yeah, but
house.
it's the style and the black trim and everything. It's very stark.
That's,
So it's shingles, not clapboard.
yes.
I'm just so puzzled by it.
I would have to say that all four of us were puzzled by the modern style, because it didn't, considering you were dealing with two other styles already, it seemed odd. So there seems to be,
There's landscaping that goes in between the
Yeah, well, that-
Mediterranean house
you
and
know,
this
we can't-
house.
hiding things is not up our alley. We just really are talking about the architectural forms on this property and the styles.
I'm puzzled, but also a little bit intrigued. Maybe less so because there's already, you have the stucco, which is, I wish we had more of that house there. Yeah, no, a third element is puzzling.
So how are we
I
doing with
know.
this?
It looks like an outhouse.
That's what it is.
Well, I know, but
I'm intrigued by the design, but I'm puzzled how it all fits.
Well, maybe,
And maybe,
you know,
yeah.
well, if it is the same shingles, maybe white trim would make a difference. You know, and maybe the flat roof kind of goes away and it minimizes the whole mass. It just feels like,
White would
it
stand
feels
out
so
more.
stark with the black.
well, it would just, I
But this
hear what you're saying.
is 65 Cooper's Neck, right next door.
white trim, black windows.
We're only
Glass
talking
atrium.
about your
Yeah.
property, sir. What's
But
next
this,
door?
this was part of the estate, the whole
It
estate.
doesn't matter. Is this the
Okay.
people who own this, do they own that
That's
property?
new construction, yeah.
No,
But
we
it-
can't.
But you look out the window and this is what you see. So if they look out the window
We're looking at the
to
property
the,
that we're discussing.
to the south, this is what you see. So if they want to look out to the north, and on their property, you see this,
Just,
it's,
that's not our consideration.
Okay.
Unless you're building the whole thing new.
but
We're
I'm just,
talking about
I'm just
what's-
saying what's, you know,
I
right
know what you're
around,
saying, but we're talking
right
about
in the
180
neighborhood. This
Great
is
Plains
another
Road.
place, 304 Meadow, which you see.
Oh, but that's.
So
far
it's,
away.
it's not, it's within the characterization of the neighborhood. This is what the owners would like. And they've tried to mix and match on their property. So if I'm looking out one window and I have to look at this has white trim, glass atrium. This is,
Yeah.
you know, a lot larger. This is 30 feet tall. This is 13 feet, a 10-foot door. If you look from the roadside, this is what you actually see. If you come over to the plan here, you have the stucco house here, which will have trees and landscaping, which you've said it could blow down, but obviously the people would put this stuff back up. You know, here's right around the corner, 304 Meadow Lane.
Not doing this. We want to look at what's at
But,
180. I know
it's
you're
what's in the
telling us, but we're
neighborhood.
talking about the number, what you're suggesting is yet a third architectural style on this property. And that's what I hear is the concern. So telling us about what's around in the neighborhood doesn't really address that issue.
In the back of the house, there's a flat roof with a deck, so it's.
If you can't see it, you can see it from the road. That's the issue, isn't it?
You can't.
You
It's 90
can't?
90 feet off the road, not unless you pull up to the hedge and you look through it.
I don't know what to say, and I'm tired. So what do other board members have to say? I'm trying to let my wits end tonight.
I have a question just about the property. It's not specifically related to the trellis, but I'm a little concerned looking at the survey. There are some gates that were discussed when this house was approved.
Okay.
Existing stucco gates. Are you familiar with those at all?
Yes.
Okay. I don't see them on the survey. Are those,
The existing stucco gate that we discussed is southeast corner, and they're
Right.
right here. They're
right,
still there.
two window gates?
Uh-huh.
Is that
With the metal grating
Right.
staying there, as the architect had said at that point. The driveway did move over where it's going to stay. The driveway is going to stay in the existing driveway.
That's what I was
The
wondering.
gates.
I'm seeing a driveway right
No,
where those gates
so-
are. Okay.
The surveyor just didn't update that part, but
Okay.
that's staying. The gates in front of the two-story guest house are staying exactly the way they are.
Okay. Thank
So I'm
you.
trying to keep the existing features
I think it makes it worse.
and trying to blend everything together
Mhm.
to sort of make everybody happy.
Christina,
Sorry.
I
Christina's,
mean,
yeah.
you were saying the
Well, I'm just
visibility may
saying,
be.
it is not visible from the street. Maybe, from this
A
side.
little bit
Yeah.
through the parking area, depends, but a little bit. it
So
would be.
I get,
The
for me,
parking area is, will have trees across it because the house has the main yard here, which is, the reason that these are small is so they can look through the backyard and keep, you know, a lot of green space.
I guess it's just.
A lot of
it's
thought
so
actually went
stark
into
that
this.
You're wondering what inspired them to come up with.
Don't ask at 11:10.
no, I could see with all the glass that there's an interest in creating something that's open. Well, if it was all glass, then that would be something else, because then it would be visible. In fact, I think we did approve a house in that area, something like that. Oh, that's right, that had it was an old garden, and they wanted to preserve it, and
The glass atrium on Ox Pasture Road.
I think so, yeah.
Pool, yeah, so I have a picture of that.
So, you know, I can appreciate that. So what I'd like to do, at least for me, is to perhaps revisit the property, which I only did from the car, but maybe walk it to see extent to which it might be visible.
It is hard without seeing renderings of this building
With
against
the
the
rest of the
other.
buildings. Or photograph,
Of the.
yeah, we need more information. Well, we could go over there, that's the other thing.
Yeah. I think if it had white trim instead of black trim, it would kind of,
Okay, done.
That might look better, yeah. I would like to see a rendering of this with white trim, because I feel like I could probably live with
This
a
is-
flat roof and a
This
more
is a
modern form.
picture from the road where you can't see in. This is a picture of the cottage. Again, this isn't even landscape, this isn't even, right now, it's not in full bloom. So this is the hedge, so this would be 3 pictures where you're looking through the road.
Seems like you came armed with a lot of photographs to defend the modern form, so you probably
Well, it's not-
anticipated we'd have some questions, which I appreciate.
And then, like, if you look at 40 Meadow
Don't
Lane,
go there, that's bad.
Oh,
like, this is where I'm on First Neck Lane, and you're looking through the Meadow Club.
But that house is
That was
one,
unstoppable.
so far away, and also.
But it's within a half
it's
mile of this
it's a-
property.
yes, but we're talking about
Okay.
This-
180
I'm just
Great
trying.
Plains. I know the
Okay.
diversion area is not helping. I actually think, well, there's all this stuff. I'm not sure.
But, you know what? Let's
think we
have to look at it.
revisit the
it would be
property.
helpful to have
You're
a
going to come back
rendering
with
that
a
shows it with white
rendering
trim
in white.
Okay.
in context of its
And we might need to see, well, we can go look at the house.
We can
It
pull
would have
out-
been nice to see a photograph of the 2 styles, other than the one you're suggesting.
Do you want these
It
to
can
go
be
in your
photographs.
file, or do you want them
You
back?
could get those.
Yeah, give them back.
You know, we do have color renderings of the house we approved. Those were in the original file.
Yes, but we're
so-
not in the cultivation of documents. That he needs
No,
to
but-
present
no,
as his
no,
case.
Let Rob finish his.
I'm just saying that if we could pull that and then get the rendering.
He can
of
pull
this with
whatever
white
he
trim.
wants.
Yeah.
We are
I
not
mean,
pulling.
Lyle?
Yes.
Is there any way where you could show, without going to great expensive rendering, because it doesn't warrant it, but somehow the collective set of buildings on the property with this one laid in?
I can ask the architect.
Lyle, no.
No?
You need to put on the photographs, if you want them submitted, what they are,
Okay,
when they were taken, what they depict.
okay.
You can't assume that some third party looking at the file is going to understand what those things mean.
So I can submit
So
these
take them
tomorrow
back.
to
If you want to write on them between now and the next meeting, bring them back to the next meeting, and just write on the back what they depict, from where from the road looking east or something like that, so that somebody could tell from the back what the photo means.
So are we asking for either I think if he gave us a photograph of the 2 other buildings that are on,
And also a color
and
rendering.
those, somehow, they don't have to all be the same size or anything, just the idea of what we're looking at. I think we can, yes, because of what I call potpourri, that everything's thrown in, so that we could judge whether or not we think that yet another architectural style would be acceptable, or that style that you're showing with the shingles is like the main house. Does that seem reasonable?
So a picture
Yes, it does.
coming west looking.
No, of the actual buildings go in the property. We're not talking about driving past. We're talking about what's on the property, which is the
take a picture
house
of the house.
and the guest house,
Okay.
because you already have
See
kind
how it all
of
fits
a
together.
mixture, and then you're asking us to approve yet another element that some of us feel is disparate, I guess, and maybe a confusing addition in terms of style, architectural style. Am I saying this right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just say, by the way, in considering it more and listening to Lyle, I think the thing that struck me as being very modern was the black trim in particular and the flat roof.
The blank.
I think there's a chance
White
that
trim might
keeping
look
it
big.
low with a flat roof might actually be a benefit in some ways, to make it go away. So,
Because I can go up
16
a
feet.
lot higher, so
Can only go
I'm
to
trying to
16 feet.
not be intrusive. The house that's there
No.
is, the cottage is probably 25 feet high, right on the road, so
I
I
think-
was trying to make this blend in a lot more.
I think if it was white and not black, I would be more comfortable, just like to see what that looks like.
I'll draw it white and bring it back.
All right, so are you asking for an adjournment until our next meeting on May 13th?
Yes.
Yes.
Motion to
Motion to approve the applicant's request for an adjournment to our meeting on May 13th.
Second.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you, have a good
Aye.
night.
Sorry you had to wait
Sorry,
so
we
long.
called you,
I wish I would have heard.
oh, well, we didn't know, you know,
That's-
I was right there.
I
You didn't have
done.
an agenda?
an agenda, a list of,
Yeah, I was after Coral
Yeah.
Brothers and before.
We called, but it's fun.
Thanks.
I'm sorry about that. We certainly didn't intend to dismiss you.
Good night.
Motion to close the meeting of the Architectural Review Board for April 22nd, 2019.
I make a motion that we close this meeting of the Board of Architecture Review and Historic Preservation on April 22nd, 2019.
Second, aye.
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 Aye.